Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 27 of the JD Outdoors podcast. Follow me on Instagram at JD underscore outdoors 1773. My guest today, my guest today will be Kyle Patrick. You can follow him on Instagram at K underscore G underscore P underscore fishing. A lot of underscores. Today we will be talking about his trip to El Salto, along with his favorite technique from the trip. Then we will talk about his upcoming tournament season, which is going to be a blast. So, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on the show. It's always fun to talk fishing with a buddy. So
Exactly.
I appreciate your time, and I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show, and like just instantly within seconds of the camera being on, we're like down a rabbit hole about fishing already, which that's the way it should be. So,
Yeah, exactly. Let's keep it fun.
exactly.
But it's kind of becoming a job a little bit. I'm just, because you gotta at some point. Sorry to jump right into it, but like I'm just realizing at some point you have to monetize your fishing, and whether that's winning tournaments or being an influencer on social media, or finding a way like you with your lure company, or your social media endeavors. It's just like you got to figure out how to make a living while fishing. And so I'm actually working right now, prepping the boat. That's all fun stuff, right? But like working under a couple pros that I've connected with through different connections, and just it's fun, but it's definitely like I'm up late, like actually doing work to try to get sponsors for them, and like sort of working basically for them, but also for me because I'm following my dream. So it's a good mix of both.
Good balance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just to start, do you want to give us a little background on your fishing career, how and when you started fishing?
Yeah, so I talked about this. I went on the podcast with Bailey. Um, I started fishing when I was, God, I couldn't even tell you, 6 years old, probably off a dock in Cooperstown, New York. I would just throw worm. I would catch a crayfish, put it on the hook, and then throw it under the dock at this resident bass. And I would catch him like every day over and over again. And it wasn't then that I realized I was obsessed with tournament fishing. It was when I moved to a different house on Otsego Lake, and I would watch like every 2 weeks out of the month there'd be a tournament going on, and the bass boats would fly down the lake, and I was always like, "What is going on?" Right? This is when I was like 12, and I finally like figured it out. Went to the weigh-in and like just talked to these like 50-year-old dudes, like these local club dudes, and I was like, this is awesome. Like they would give me some baits and I would go try them and be like, oh my God, these work so well. And that's how I sort of like brought all of it together, started fishing tournaments, met my good friend who was very helpful in teaching me fishing, Jim O'Brien. Talked about him in the prior podcast too. And we just went out and started fishing tournaments and tournaments. Like I would sign up. I spent so much money on entry fees. Like everything I had, I would work all summer and just spend it on tackle and entry fees out of my little bass tracker that I was, blessed enough to get from my parents. Instead of a car, they bought me like a used bass tracker. And so I just strapped that to the Honda Pilot that my mom had and just sent it all around upstate New York. I only won like my first season, I think I won 3 events, but I fished like 20. So it was like terrible ratio. And then it progressed from there. And obviously this past year I had a sick year. I won over 15 grand. I don't want to shoot too high, but I know it was over 15 grand fishing in upstate New York. So it's sort of, you can see the progress, and it's just great to like feel like you're accomplishing something. But yeah, so you got me on a tangent there again, but
No, you're good.
yeah,
You're
that's how it started.
No,
Oh,
where do you want to take your fishing? Because obviously, you and I have talked about what we want to do with fishing, but
yeah. I mean, so to me, I go big or go home. Like if I'm doing something, I'm doing it as hard, as much, as often as possible. So, I mean, I was sort of, when I graduated college from Hobart in Geneva, New York. and I chose it because it was near the Finger Lakes, obviously. And I just was sort of confused because I was like, I really love fishing, um, but I just don't know like where I'm going to go with it, because I didn't know that if I could become a professional angler or like how it all worked. But then I just decided, you know what, like I've got nothing to lose. I'm 23. I am just, living my best life. So I just decided to go for it. And it wasn't really until my dad connected me with my mentor now, who's helping me in the fishing industry. His name's Paul Pagnato. Um, that I really was like, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to try to make the elites someday. It doesn't necessarily have to be this year. I'm fishing 3 Central Opens as a pro, and then the Northern and Southerns as a co, just so I can learn, as well as like we talked about, marshaling the elites.
Yeah.
But it sort of has come together, and I dove right into just, I want to make the elites. That's the final goal. And it's not going to come easy, but it's something I think is attainable. And as long as I'm fishing a lot, I live in Virginia now, and so it's pretty easy. It's accessible. I can go to New York, I can go to Florida, I can go to South Carolina. It's super. And driving for me is nothing these days. 8 hours is like everyone else's 4. It feels like, because I just do it so often. But yeah, I want to go all in. I want to see what I can do. Maybe I got to set a limit, because at some point, if I don't make the elites in 10 years, I'm not going to just keep pouring money into it. But I'm going to say like probably 5 years. I'll give myself 5 years to try to make the elites. So this year, I'm going to try to learn as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The main goal this year is to learn as much as possible and have nothing like blocking, no techniques in mind. I just want to go open-minded, forget everything, forget my success in New York. That literally does not matter at all. Because I'm going to marshal all these elites. I'm going to learn just incredible amounts. Then I'll be a co-angler and sort of apply it. And then, in between with the 3 Central Opens, try to just go for it. And if I made it this year, it'd be insane, but like super unlikely, because these guys are absolute hammers in the Opens. Like, I just read an article, actually, I don't know if you saw it, on Wired to Fish, about just how good the Bassmaster Opens field is. Like, people don't, like, it's gotten progressively harder over the years with the introduction of electronics, different techniques, different rods, like specifically designed for that angler. I mean, all of these factors play a role into how hard it is to win a tournament, because everyone has, like, you either, I mean, the youth movement, that's all that, but like everyone has everything so dialed that you just have to be a little bit more dialed than the next guy. You're going to get me on a rant here again, but it's just so hard to win one of those Opens. So it's kind of unrealistic, but we'll see. We're going to give it a shot. And I have confidence in myself for sure.
Exactly. All you can do is try, and having that confidence is key. Is it's like other sports, which no one ever compares it, which is weird to me, but it's just like football. It's like any other sport. You have to have the confidence to make that play. You have to have the confidence to catch those fish. Like, if you're not
Yeah.
confident, then you see it happen. Teams fold, and then you're out.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, like, I like, people say fishing's luck, and everyone who's probably gonna watch this podcast, you, me, everyone in the bass fishing industry knows that's BS, complete horseshit. But I mean, to compare it to sports, like, I mean, the mental side of it is another huge thing. I know you had talked about with me before the podcast, like staying positive during a tournament, or just all these tiny things factor in. It takes a lot of mental energy to compete at that level. It also takes a lot of confidence, and it takes knowing when, like, you've made the wrong decision and you need to learn from it. And that's a huge thing, I think, is not being too confident to the point where you're cocky, where you're not soaking in as much information as possible, because then you're left in the dust. So it's a fine line, and I think that's every angler, even if you're KVD, should obviously have under their belt, is like the ability to learn. So,
and another thing, just to mention, what talking about it, comparing it to other sports, unlike most sports, we're out there for 8 hours plus in the sun.
right.
So it's like, what are average games in sports? You know, like what couple hours max.
Yeah, but you gotta
I
to
know, but they're
defend.
running around and stuff. I know they're running around and stuff. Don't
Yeah,
get me
yeah,
wrong,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but being in the sun for 8 hours
Oh,
straight
I know,
is just, especially,
dude.
you're practicing and stuff that week before, and then you go,
Yeah,
and it's nice and hot out.
right.
Insane.
So I'll play devil's advocate, and then I'll stay with you. Devil's
Okay.
advocate. I was a soccer player for 4 years at Hobart. All 4 years I played. That those type of sports where you're physically exerting yourself so much, it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard, and I don't think you can even compare it to fishing. Although fishing is just as hard, but in different ways. So you can't even compare. But when people say it's not a sport, I do agree that they are completely wrong.
Yes.
Completely wrong. But like then you look at fishing, and I just feel like you have to spend more time to be the best. But maybe that's not true. I mean, it's so hard. It's just so hard to say.
There's
But
no
I mean, you
set.
look at, but then again, you look at like, so I placed 14th on the Harris chain at the Team Trail Championship, right? Looking back on that experience, I put so much time into that tournament, because then you have to also factor in traveling. You have to factor in waking up at 5. Like I had 10-hour days on the water because you were only allowed 3 pre-fishing days.
Yeah.
So I had like 10, 11-hour days on the water because it was sun up to sundown. You had to be in. So that's like, say 10 hours. That's 30 hours of pre-fishing in 3 days.
Yeah.
And then 8 hours times 3 days for the tournament. So like, it's not like a soccer game where it's 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be on it for 2 weeks straight, pretty much. That's what makes them so different.
Yeah.
So
It's more of a long haul thing than it is, especially once you're getting into the elites. It's a long haul thing. Weekend anglers, it's more of a sprint, so to speak, because it's a 1 day event. But when you get
yeah.
into having 3 days of practice, 3 to 4 tournament days, it's insane.
But and then you think about like 1-day tournament, 2-day tournament. How about a 3-day tournament? Like you're not only pre-fishing for a day, you're pre-fishing for 3 days. So now you have to factor in, all right, is this pattern or technique or spot or whatever you're doing, is it enough to sustain me for 3 days, or do I now have to go out and find a backup, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D? Oh, what if there's a cold front that's coming? How are they going to respond? Like it is crazy how much just mental energy you need to like be successful. Yeah, it's wild.
And a lot of people don't think about that side of it. um, those who are super serious, I think, take that into consideration, but just how the little details of the weather or line size or all these things that go into fishing that people don't think about. And some of them are
Yeah.
just, yeah, I'm out fishing, I know what pound test I'm using, but they don't really think, and I'm guilty of this as well, but they don't think, I wonder if I lowered, if I went from 10 to 6 pound test, drop shotting or something, how many more bites I'm going to get or something along those lines.
Right, dude. Everyone's guilty of that. I mean, if you say you're not guilty of that, like even if you're the best angler in the world, you're lying, because like everyone gets locked into a pattern a little too long, or does something to ruin their tournament day, or throw them off in some way. I mean, that's just fishing, and that's what makes it so hard. But then you got to have the ability to bounce back and realize you've made that mistake and change. That's what's key, is like learning from your mistakes. I mean, but then you have days where you go out on the water and you don't even think, you're like, oh, that dock looks good. And you flip under and there's a 9-pounder and you're like, oh well. And then like everyone praises you for it. And in reality, you're hiding behind the fact that you had no idea what you were doing. You just happened to catch one. Like that is literally the story of Rick Clunn, in, not that saying he's not a legendary angler, but in that one, in the past, what tournament was it? It was Bass Fest, Texas Bass Fest or whatever. He said on stage, he was like, I pulled up on a dock and I caught 29 pounds or whatever he caught. I think it was like 26 or somewhere in there on one dock, and I just didn't know why. And then you saw throughout the tournament he shit the bed. But like it's funny how like then you have those magical moments where you know nothing, and you, not that he doesn't know nothing, but you randomly come across an area and it has crazy fish on it and you have no idea why. It's funny how it works like that in your favor. But
Yeah, no, it's so much goes into it that it's really we could make a 5 hour podcast and
right.
we're not even going to scratch the surface,
Oh, I know.
you know.
It's
But
crazy.
so obviously, as I said in the intro, you had a trip to Mexico
Yes.
earlier, and that was in November.
Yep. Yep.
November you went, and so tell us about it. You know, did you catch a lot? What did you learn?
Well, yeah. So I'm very thankful to Paul who helped me like get there, and just provide an amazing experience there. But so the thing about El Salto is like it is actually a bass fisherman's paradise. Like unbelievable. And I got to thank Half Past for his cast, Pete Robbins and his wife, Hannah Robbins. He's actually a writer for Bassmaster. They run a company that it does trips there, and they're awesome at planning it and just making the experience great for you. It's just there. It's phenomenal. So if you or your buddies like want to plan a trip, they do like all kinds of like, deals with you and like figure it out with you. So it's a really good company. Check them out. Quick shout out. But yeah, so that lake, it's El Salto is something just so special. Like the minute you walk up to the lake, you're lodging on the lake. Um, the minute you walk up, there's just thousands of tilapia fighting at the surface. Like literally, like our guide was like, "Yeah, look at this." He threw out a jerk bait and went 1, 2, 3, and he had 2 tilapia on the. I was like, "Dude, this is gonna be ridiculous," because there's just so much bait and
Yeah,
so much tilapia in that lake that, to be honest with you, you can throw just about anything and catch a 25-pound bag every day. Like literally every day. Like you rake your PB. If your PB is under 7 pounds, if anyone's PB is under 7 pounds, they'll beat it at El Salto. It's crazy. But we talked about you had asked me before the podcast what sort of baits that like I fish there and like what I learned. And the swim bait obviously played a factor, but I think the jig really sort of was the like shining, like the gem there, at least when I went. And it was because it sort of mimicked, how like the jig, there's the jig sort of mimics crayfish, but it also mimics that sunfish sort of dying sort of deal. And they just seemed to love it. So I used a Dirty Jigs half-ounce flipping jig, and I swapped between black and blue, and the water got a little bit stained, which is obvious. And then the green pumpkin blue flake in those clearer parts. And it was just on, like, I can't even tell you, like, you'd throw a cast 4-pounder, throw a cast 6-pounder. I mean, double ups, like, it's so loaded with fish. It's hard to say that the jig was the main reason we were catching fish, because you could just about throw anything. Like we were at one point, we were drop shotting. There's these giant trees, like that you pull the boat up to, like in the middle of the lake, giant trees that like split and have all kinds of like branches and things for these fish to sit on. So we were drop shotting lizards straight down the tree in like 25 feet of water and just bouncing it and just getting the bite. And I mean, you could do anything. But the jig caught the biggest fish for me, which was like, I think it was like 7.5, maybe 8 pounds. I didn't weigh it
yeah,
officially,
no way.
but
Yeah,
it was giant. I mean, it was giant. Yeah, you saw. I posted on Instagram. It was giant. But then the guy the day before me caught a 994 right outside the lodge. Like, and they're just these fish just grow different there. It has to be because of all the tilapia. I actually don't know the specific science behind it or why. Obviously, the weather. I mean, it's pretty much always nice,
yeah,
like 70s plus. But the tilapia have to be the answer. I mean, it's incredible. Like people flock, it gets stocked. So it gets stocked with tilapia because people like, there's nets all around the whole lake that you have to avoid when you're fishing, tilapia nets. And then they sell them in Mexico City. Like it's very interesting, that ecosystem. It's crazy, but yeah. So that El Salto trip was a once in a lifetime experience. I highly recommend for anyone.
It's definitely on my bucket list.
And it's not that much. It's not that much money. You'd be surprised. It's good. I can't say it's not that much money. It's like you could do it for under $3K.
Oh, that seems reasonable to me for a
Right.
trip.
That's what I mean. Like, so if you find the right flights and you book through Half Past First Cast, you could do it for a pretty affordable rate. So it's a cool thing. I would check them out. It's awesome.
I mean, just for a little bit of comparison, imagine just driving from, say where you are to stay in Buffalo for a tournament, a 2-day tournament. That's going to cost you, if you had to get a hotel room and all that,
Oh,
that
yeah.
cost you a few $100, gas and all that.
Oh, that'll cost you $1,000, I bet. I mean, yeah.
So
right.
for a few $1,000s, that's nothing to go to Mexico and catch giant fish.
And catch giant fish. Like, and I can't promise, and they can't promise you're going to catch a 10, but if there's 30 guys there, someone will, or someone will catch a 9+. And I lost a giant on a swim bait. Like and the funny thing is, I didn't have swim baits they were biting on. They were biting on just regular Storm pre-rigged swim baits, 1 ounce. Yeah. Oh, dude, I was rolling it, set the hook. The fish jumps in the air, and the guide and Paul both go, and I was like, oh, and he spit it. And I was like, no. And the guy was like, that was 10-pounder. I was like, oh no. So it was crazy, but I mean, just an unbelievable experience.
And it goes to show that, when we're really into bass fishing, we look at baits and, a lot of people, certain jigs have to have a certain amount of this color, certain amount of that color to be absolutely perfect. But then you're, like you just said, you just threw a Storm pre-rigged swim bait out there and they were munching it.
Right. And some days, I mean, you can, granted that's El Salto, but some days, if you find the right presentation and you're on the right fish, you don't need anything special. That's why you have guys like, for example, on the Sandy Cooper on the Elite Series, there was a guy who was catching, I forget his name. I wish I was better at memorizing these guys' names. I know a lot of them, but this one guy was catching them just on a wacky rig Senko in the cypress trees, like just normal sort of, you know what I mean? I mean, not that, Brendan Polnick's out there drop shotting, catching 7-pounders on like random isolated structure, but like in 20 feet, granted, that's how you win, but you can do really well and be successful fishing simply. Like, I firmly believe if you find the right deal, but
No, and I got to agree with you, because that day that we went out fishing on Anna, it was just, you told me you need like 3 rods. So I brought them. We ended up using, we didn't even catch any on the wacky rig. All we needed was the jig, and we were just doing golden.
Yeah, you probably, what was that? What was that pig?
588.
Yep, 588, dude. And the funny thing is, this is what I see. I think about that fish a lot more than you think, and here's why. Because for me, going to fish the northerns and southerns as a co-angler is going to take a lot of patience. I will learn a lot, but it's going to take a lot of patience, because I've never not fished from the front of the boat. Because when I was 15 and a half, I got a bass boat, and I have always had one since. And it's very fortunate, but at the same time, it's going to be really hard for me to not make the decisions and not have the first cast and not, be at the front of the boat, like doing everything that I normally do. But, you can't, I had to really, really remember, like, even a cast 6 inches difference can be the difference between a 588 and nothing. Like, I flipped right near where you flipped on that fish and didn't get bit. You flipped right back in, maybe like 10 inches to the right or left. Yeah. And that's the difference between throwing the jig behind the fish's tail and in front of his face. So I think about it a lot, because that's how I really have to approach these opens. You can't give up on used water as
Mhm.
fast as a lot of people do. And I think that's a big thing for guys fishing the opens, as a co-angler, and just any tournament in general in the back of a boat
Yeah,
is you know what I mean?
exactly. So like if I'm fishing with my dad, I'm on the front of the boat and
Right.
he's in the back, and there are days where he will outfish me like by far, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't understand. So then you dissect the day as you're driving home, and you're like, well, duh, he was using a longer leader or something like that.
Right.
And I was just using a short leader, but maybe they wanted that because the water was more clear that day. And it's
Yeah.
just, you can learn a lot from people in the back of the boat, or vice versa, because you
Yeah.
gotta always try something a little different if you're not getting bit. And just like that experience you and I had, we were just messing around, and all of a sudden you caught one on the jig, and then we were just like, all right, let's pick up the jigs, and just boom, dialed in instantly. For both
Yeah.
of us, it's not like you caught a few more fish, but it's not like you outfished me like an
Well,
insane
dude,
amount.
weight wise, you outfished me
Yeah,
with that 5 and 8. I mean, I probably had what? I had like a 3 pounder and a couple twos. You had like a 5, a 2. You know what I mean? And like another 3 or whatever it was. But
yeah,
that was a sick day.
yeah, no
But yeah,
doubt.
it goes to show you, like it's. I mean, it's weird because most of the time it's hard to transition from being a co-angler to a boater,
Yeah,
um, because you gotta those the huge thing about bass fishing is those split second, sort of hunches or decisions that you make. Like, the classic one is like, Randy Howell, like, I just had that overwhelming feeling to turn around and tie on my Livingston. Like, that's the classic, like scenario where he like just turns around in the middle of the tournament. But it's honestly the amount of times that people have won tournaments just saying, you know what, it's that dock, or it's that I should move out here 20 feet. I have a feeling about this depth. Like Brendan Polnick with that drop shot fish that won on the Sandy Cooper, or like I won like 4 grand on Cuca this past summer because it wasn't because of this, but it certainly helped. I was ripping down the lake like 62 miles an hour with my buddy Fins and Feathers fishing, Jimmy. And I go, yo, Jimmy, we're going to stop here for a second. And I take almost a U-turn and come into this dock, flip in 4.5 pound smallmouth, 4.5 pound smallmouth under this dock. And this is one of those tournaments where it's like 16, 17 pounds and to win the second day, or I'm sorry, the first day. And it's just, we were both like, that's so bizarre because it looked like such a terrible dock, yet there was a 4.5 pound smallmouth under it. And it's just that hunch, that weird decision that you have to sort of get tuned in. Like, you have to be comfortable enough with yourself to say, like, I trust myself to
yeah,
do this. So that's one of those tough transitions to go from the to the front, versus what I'm struggling with is like having that hunch but not being able to do anything about it. And that's why I'm very excited to fish as a pro, so these guys can put me in my place and
yeah.
remind me that I know a lot less than these guys do, because I know so much less than they do. But maybe I'll surprise myself, who knows.
Yeah. I only did one tournament this past year as a co-angler. I did the St. Lawrence tournament for the Fed, and
Yeah.
I learned we zeroed, man. I'll be honest with you, we zeroed, but
Really?
I learned we could have turned fish in. We could have,
Oh, okay.
not a bag, like respectable, like
Right, right,
so.
right.
We're fishing, and I'm watching him, and he's got the 360 up front, so I'm kind of like just looking over his shoulder trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see what's going on with that. And I'm kind of, we're fishing deep. It's summertime, and on the St. Lawrence, so you're fishing deeper. And I'm just watching what he's doing, and I'm looking at his rods, and I'm just absorbing everything. And we caught some fish here and there, nothing respectable, but I learned so much, even though we didn't do great or good, even for that matter. And I learned so much from that day. So it's just any experience you can learn from it.
Yeah, no, it's such an enlightening experience for me, I think. And especially just being amongst like some of the greats. Like, I'm gonna be like literally marshaling the best anglers in the world. So I'll be doing what you did. Obviously, I can't have a rod in my hand, but I'll be watching everything and just soaking it all in. And so I'm also learning a lot about social media. I mean, I'm starting this YouTube series. that we'll see how it goes. It's going to be super random, and it may totally fail and I may get nothing. But I'm going to do a YouTube series about like, you know, being on the Bassmaster Opens and marshaling the elites. Two separate things. Marshaling the elites, there'll be a sort of a YouTube series for it, and then fishing the Bassmaster Opens, a YouTube series for it. We'll see if either of them pan out to be anything, but it'll be cool to just document it, even for my own sake, if no one else likes it. But
Well, if you eventually need a camera guy, let me know, because that would
yeah, no, well, I'm actually going to be the camera guy for Chad Morgan Taylor.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm actually the one trying to learn that deal.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know enough, you know what I mean? But I'm not gonna have like $10,000 camera equipment. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's something special. This is gonna be a good year.
Yeah, a lot of traveling. My girlfriend's not too pumped about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be very, very electric.
And how many people get to do it at 23 years old, nonetheless? So
Right. That's the thing. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. Very, very lucky.
So we touched upon this a little bit earlier, but I kind of wanted to break down the bait a little bit more and get specific on it. The jig, you know, you mentioned a dirty jig, 1/2 ounce in the green pumpkin blue flake.
Yeah.
Rod wise, reel, line, what are you using? Trailer, all that.
Yeah. So pretty much I stick to obviously Douglas rods. I use 7.6 X Matrix or 7.4. I'm sorry, a 7.4 X Matrix, medium heavy, super awesome rod. I use it for a lot of things. I sometimes use it for big swim baits, but during El Salto, the trip to El Salto, I used it for my jigs. The dirty jigs 1/2 ounce, like I said. For the trailer, you know, I used a couple. So the Zoom, the packet chunk, the net bait packet chunk. I would use that when I felt like I wasn't getting enough bites, sort of downsize a little bit. And then the Rage Craw, obviously, I mean, that's my go-to, dude. If I do well in any of these Centrals Opens, it'll be because of the Rage Craw. I love that bait. And that's what to be honest, I think 80% of the tournaments in upstate New York this past summer were won on a dirty jigs 1/2 ounce with a Rage Craw. So it just goes to show you, like, the crayfish bite in New York is just top notch. But yeah, so that's the jig setup I was using. And I think for line, I go all out with line. I buy Tatsu. It's so gosh darn expensive. And every time I buy it, I'm like, God, that hurts the bank account. Yeah. But it just does not snap. And it's so clear, so smooth. I want to get sponsored by them someday at Seagar, because they make such good line. And I know people like Sunline, and there's a lot of other line companies, but 25-pound test Tatsu has the same diameter as 20-pound test Berkeley. So you're getting the same diameter in 25-pound fluorocarbon that I have rarely snapped, if ever. So I was using that. It comes off really smooth. I can skip it well under docks, near cover. Obviously, if I'm punching, I'll go with braid with the jig, but I usually don't punch with the jig anyway. But yeah, so that's the deal. That was the deal.
I love the Seagar line as well. The only thing is with their braid, I wish they had a yellow instead of the green. I'm just not. I like high vis braid, but I'm just not a fan of that green for some reason.
You don't like you don't like their green.
I don't like their green. No, I like the. I don't have
it. Power Pro.
Who makes it?
Power Pro.
Yozuri. The
Yozuri. Yeah.
That yellow, like, I love that color.
Why do you like yellow? I've always wondered why people have yellow.
I can see it the best.
Right. That's fair enough. I see that.
Because, like, when I'm drop shotting or something super sensitive, I like the brighter braid. I've used white before as well, because I think it, like, against the water, it stands out.
Yeah.
I just, for that, if I'm flipping or something, and people have experimented with it. I've seen Fighter do it, flipping with the neon braid as well. That way you can see it, but he ties a fluoro leader. So
yeah, dude, I just can't get behind that. Sorry to cut you off, but
You're good.
I can't get behind braid to fluoro flipping. I just feel like that's the weak point. It's the weak point for me personally. And I know people will say, oh, you're crazy, but like, that's just my humble opinion. I think if you're going to flip, go braid or go fluorocarbon, depending on your situation. And Greg Hackney said it the best. He's talking about, he's like, I don't know why people are afraid to use braid, because your jig has a 2-inch piece of wire sticking up for a weed guard, and the fish aren't not biting it because of that. So why does it matter that there's that much line, you know? Or like when he talks about like people cutting their like excess line when you tie a knot, you know how there's that excess line.
Yeah.
People are like cutting it so close, and it's like just cut it, leave it some space. It's all good. It's not like if you're fishing deep weeds, it's not like you're not going to get the bite or it's structure. So on that, like just from what I've experienced, I can't get behind that. But the high vis braid, I do hear you on like drop shotting, like because I know that's big. You know me, I'm not a huge deep water guy, but the drop shot, I feel like braid is the deal.
Yeah.
Definitely. I haven't used it that much, but
Yeah. Well,
I'm
yeah,
taking your
I can
word
tell
for it.
you, it's definitely awesome. Yeah, I've just been trying to find, and I used the stealth gray, I think it's called, and the Smackdown, is it from Seagar?
Yes, I think
The
so.
braid, yeah, Seagar Smackdown, and I love that stuff. That's silky smooth, and that was really nice this year on a few of my rods.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
long do you keep your braid on?
man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm lazy. I've left it on every year for a year.
Right. Yeah. You know,
A lot of
I
people,
don't think there's a problem with that.
yeah,
Me mentally, I just can't keep fluorocarbon on. Like, dude, I swear to God, I'll change it every tournament.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm nowhere near that.
no. But okay, let me rephrase that. What I'll do is like for the Central Opens, those 3 tournaments, I'm gonna have new line on everything
Yeah,
before.
and I don't blame you there for sure.
It's just too much money on the line.
Yeah,
To not invest like $50 or $60 or $100 to win 40K, it's like, come on. But like for upstate New York tournaments, like what I'll do is every tournament I'll strip some line off, cut it, retie. There's too many tiny little errors that can happen within that line, like a tiny little nick that you don't even feel when you rub your hand up it, that I'll just pull off like, 15 feet or something, and then tie the jig and be good to go. So I don't know if that's what I just can't, like, confidence wise, it may not even be necessary,
yeah, that's true as well. A lot of it is that, and I think like you said, with cutting it so close to the knot, that's probably confidence for people as well. Even if they're not like
Right.
knowingly doing it, they're
Mm-hmm.
probably like, oh well, I've cut it this way every time and I get bit, so why wouldn't I do it?
Right. No, it's just, I mean, again, like we talked about in the beginning, it comes down to like just understanding what's going to make you better throughout the day. If that is buying $60 worth of line to make you more confident and make you feel better, because again, staying positive is the name of the game. Like you could be totally, shitting the bed, and as long as you have a positive attitude, it can change within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's all about not giving up, the whole thing. Like Mike Iaconelli can preach that all he does. Um, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Confidence.
I think this year, especially for me, is going to be one of my best years because I think gear wise, I'm gonna have the proper stuff,
Yep.
for everything, and I'm really getting well rounded in my equipment. And as for the line, you know, because I haven't wanted to invest in it,
Right.
I've just been using Red Label for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And it's not bad line
No,
whatsoever.
I'm sure
I'm
it's not.
getting the what is it, the Invisex
Yep.
this year. I'm getting the Invisex for everything. Just it's a slight upgrade, but I've heard such great things about the Invisex, so
Yeah.
just I want to try it and see what happens.
Yeah, dude. And you'll probably get that little bit of extra, like, okay, I'm feeling good about my line, my reels, my rods.
Yeah.
Are you gonna fish any Finger Lakes Opens or anything like that?
So with my club, I haven't seen the schedule yet, but we're probably, I hope so at least this year, gonna head out to Cayuga. We do Canisius and Honey Eye every year, so we'll get out to those. But for the Fed schedule, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I believe they're on Cayuga, and maybe it's Oneida, I think, for one of
There
them.
you go.
I want to get to Cuca this year for sure because I've heard such good things.
What?
Obviously, yeah, from you, and
Oh, dude, you gotta go to Cuba. It's so good.
never been, never
Oh,
been.
it's so good. It's stingy, but it's really good when it's on. It really is.
Yeah. We also did which one is it? Is it it's one of the Finger Lakes? It's not.
Um, is it
Starts with a
is it
C.
more west or more east?
It's more west, I believe. It
Uh,
starts with a C.
Aegis, no. Honeyoi, no. Canandaigua,
Yeah, Canandaigua.
Canandaigua.
And man, I just sucked that day. I zeroed. It was just my dad caught one bass at the end of the day that didn't even measure.
Do you ever
And
try going up in those creeks? Like those little, like, or not creeks, little inlets that they have at the end. Like
oh,
I saw it on Google Maps, but I've actually, believe it or not, never fished Canandaigua. I just
I
know.
only fished it that one day, and I didn't have much time to do research or anything, so I kind of
Right.
went in blind. But I was like, I've done good on tournaments before where I go in completely blind, so maybe that'll work. And it did.
Right. I'm just looking at it now. There's little, like, there's that one, like, um marina type, like, um it's sort of like it's in the town of Canandaigua. Like there's like if you look in here, I've always wondered and heard good things about it. See that the little inlet
Yeah,
there?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I've
way at
always,
the north end, right?
that's what?
Way at the north end.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
remember
there's
seeing
a
it.
big river that, like, kind of, or a river or outtake, I don't know what it is. It goes all the way back. And sometimes, sometimes that's the deal in upstate
Yeah,
New
I've
York.
heard it's like Dock Central up there, so like that would definitely be something cool to go check out. And I almost did it at the end of the day just because docks were my only confidence I had, and that's where we caught the one fish on the lake. So I was like, probably should have gone and done it, but
What tournament was it? Or I mean, sorry, what won the tournament?
oh boy,
Like 15.
14 pounds
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. So it wasn't like a big bag.
No, 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 no.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think some guys were even turning in smallies if I remember correctly. Uh, and it was a learning experience, that's for sure,
Yeah.
because when I got there I just wasn't expecting the lake to lay out how it did.
Right.
I was expecting that. I knew the north end was shallow, but I didn't think it was shallow for that far. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of sparse weeds too when I was there in the
Mm.
north end, so it's not like I could even just have confidence that they're in the grass. It's like,
Right. Dude, I regret not going out on this lake this summer because it looks awesome. I mean, not, I don't know how it fishes. Like I said, I've never been on it, but I've heard of some pretty big bags, like 20 plus, coming out of there occasionally.
yeah,
Uh,
I've heard that too, and I think in the north end for sure. I think in the springtime I want to go back would be
oh
killer
yeah.
because it's just all rock.
Right.
So like those smallies are going to come up super early to spawn on those
Yeah.
grass flats. So I think in the springtime, if I went back, I would be able to catch some, but just in the summertime, I was lost. So I know a lot of people caught them in the south end of the lake. So for me, I got to go check that out
Right.
because it just so many people were down there and catching them that it was kind of stupid for me
Yeah.
not to go try it out.
Yeah. Then again, it's the little decisions.
Yeah.
and like you said, at least you've figured that out. Like that's just a step. Every time, I think, just to bring it full circle, every time that I have a realization like you just did, I sort of mentally log it and apply it when needed, or when I sort of have a situation similar. And even if not that, just remember it and sort of try to, like, grow from that, even though it's really hard because every body of water is so different. But if you have enough of those, oh, what if moments, or like, I should have done this moments, they'll come together, and then you can, like, piece it together off of that. That's sort of like what I've been
Yeah,
trying
you're
to
just
do.
building the puzzle. And um, I have a fishing log that I keep, and I write down, the water temp, all the details. And at the end, I do like a little paragraph of how the day went. And
That's smart. I need to start doing
a
that.
lot of the times I look at it, or even for that tournament on Thousand Islands, like I wrote down like notes throughout the day. If we were moving spots, I would type something in the notes, and that way I didn't want to forget it. And when you write it down, I think it's like when you write something down, you're 90% more likely to remember it.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of just cementing that in my brain, and then I can look back. So now when I'm up on the St. Lawrence again in whenever it was, August, I know what to do more so, and I can look back and, oh, the water temp was 72 degrees or
Yeah.
something, and I'm faced with those same situations, the night before the tournament, or
Right.
whatever. I can look through that log, and I can even type in water temp 73 degrees, and it'll bring up all my times that I've ever
Interesting.
fished it.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I should start doing that. That's a really good idea. The one
You
thing
just keep the basic information, it will help.
Right. The one thing I worry about though is like how much things change.
Yeah.
And and I'm so guilty of this, is just making decisions based on prior like experiences.
True.
And I was guilty of it during the Harris chain. I could have won that event. I really could have with Jimmy. I could have placed really, really high. Like, I mean, I've got 14th out of like 148 or 150 or whatever it was. I could have been top five had
Yeah.
I not had a preconceived like sort of thought process behind certain canals. And that's what killed it. And so it's a real, like I said in the beginning, it's such a fine line of having past knowledge, but also like not sort of going over the top with it.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, you
making
got to find that blend, and I definitely, as everyone is guilty of, past experience. You go to your favorite lake and you fish that dock every time, and a lot of the times you end up
but you're
disappointed because
successful. But you like, and sometimes I feel
yeah.
like sometimes like don't tell me you don't have that one spot where you go and you're like, I'm gonna catch a fish here.
Oh, exactly. You're just confident spots, like uh,
Yeah.
just everyone has those, and and some days it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. But when it
Yeah.
doesn't pay off is when you've got to go back to the drawing board a little bit and say, okay, let's not freak out here, but I know that I can catch them this way somewhere else, or I can catch them somewhere else in a different, technique or
Yeah.
different depth. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
but a few last questions to kind of wrap up the show here, because we keep getting on these side tangents,
I
which
know.
I told
Yeah.
you is fine with me, fine with me. Uh, but two questions, and then we'll kind of shoot the breeze a little bit more. But what is your favorite snack on the water? I fished with you for a day. I did not see you eat, so I don't know.
Dude, it's funny when I fish, I don't eat that much. And not saying I don't eat, because you got to eat,
Yeah.
because you at a certain point, I mean, your energy has to stay up. So what I will say is Paul Pagnato introduced me to Bulletproof products. Okay. Probably never heard of them. You will soon, because they'll be helping us along here. Um, Unbelievable, super like they have proteins and collagen and certain vitamins, and like they have bars, like really healthy.
What's it
Um,
called again?
Look them up. It's called Bulletproof. They make bulletproof coffee.
Oh, okay, it came up.
Yep. So I'm pretty much going to start just exclusively using those products. Um, Super high in fat. So like, and their coffee doesn't have mold in it. Not that so this sort of relates with snacks, but
Okay.
point to answer your question, bulletproof bars and protein in water. I literally put protein in water. It's not much. It's enough so I can just get that energy. But back to the bulletproof, they make coffee that has no mold in it. So the mold in coffee is apparently really bad for you. Um, and so they make like a mold-free coffee, and there's certain ways to make the coffee, and you blend it up with, you can do it based on what your diet sort of
Yeah.
is like, but I mean, this coffee's, you don't sacrifice taste, and there's no mold. I don't know much about it. I'm just telling you because I just recently learned. But they're a badass company. And,
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They got a lot of stuff, so I'm gonna have to dig in a little bit more after the episode. But
yeah,
I'll definitely give that a look.
absolutely.
And
It's
then the next
cool.
question is, do you have any tips for staying positive on the water? We kind of touched upon it a little bit in the episode, but
Yeah. So, you know, for me, it again, it's such a fine line because you don't want to be too positive. Because if you're too positive, I feel it can bite you in the ass. Because if you're too positive, you won't make the proper changes. So every tournament I go into, my mindset is I need 20 pounds. And it basically defined this year. Every time I went out in the water on a tournament, it was I need 20 pounds. Even if I was on a fishery where I knew 13 pounds was going to win it, it's literally ingrained in my mind. I need 20 pounds to win this tournament. That way, you're never stopping, you're never slowing down, you're trying to figure them out all the time. So that's sort of how I stay positive. And it kind of can hurt you too, because then you're like, oh, I only have 14, we're gonna lose, but maybe you'll win. But then it just, progresses. But yeah, I think it's that mindset of just, I need 20 pounds to win and I can do it. Like I can catch 20 pounds. It's only 5 4-pound largemouth or smallmouth, you know? And I know there are some exceptions, like on the St. Lawrence, you need like 25 pounds in a 4-day tournament or 26 or 28. But I mean, the gold standard on pretty much most bodies of water across the United States are 20 pounds.
Mhm.
And, obviously there's the St. Lawrence with 26, and then there's maybe, um, you
Lake
know,
Erie with a 29-pound bag.
right. I mean, and then you have like the days on Lake Anna where there's 12 pounds that wins the tournament.
Yeah.
So that's going to even it out. And I think 20 pounds is that bar that every tournament angler, whenever they go out on the water in any tournament, should say, I need at least 20 pounds, period. And that's sort of what helps me stay super positive is knowing that I can and it's achievable. And you just have to think like that.
That's a good goal to set, and that's something unique that I have not heard yet as an answer. So I appreciate that. That's awesome. And when you have high hopes and expectations, sometimes you're going to get let down, but when it does work out, it feels all that better.
Exactly. Exactly right.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. I learned a lot, as I always do, talking with you, and I hope the listeners learned as well. Is there anyone that you'd like to shout out? I know you have a lot going on this year, so if there's
Cool.
anyone that you want to get out there.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Shouting out my Instagram name. I got to get the word out. I'm doing all this stuff, but yeah, I would say shout out to former baptized. His name was Baptized Gravy, but it's Fins and Feathers Fishing. Give him a follow on Instagram, and follow Chad Morgan Taylor if you don't already. I mean, that guy is a stud on the Elite Series, and he's doing big things. He's going to be a dangerous factor on this year's Elite Series. So I give him a follow on Instagram. He also has some, pretty sweet videos. He's good. He's a good dude to follow on Instagram. So give him a follow.
All right.
That's all I have to say.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
man. And thank you for listening, and stay tuned for episode number, what will it be, 28 of the JD Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Wu Tungsten, X Zone Lures, and Rika Outdoors.
See you later.